Natasha Zarine from EcoSattva Environmental Solutions. Natasha is a co-founder and MD at EcoSattva Environmental Solutions Private Limited. She spends her time building simple adaptive solutions to complex civic system challenges, along with her co-founder Gauri Mirashi. So over the last 5 years, with the help of her 60% strong team at EcoSattva, she has partnered with government bodies to deliver solid waste management, green cover management, and water body management services in cities, towns, and villages in India, as well as in Argentina and Bali. We welcome you, Natasha. Today, she will be talking about Kham River Restoration Project, restoring a river ecologically. Yeah. Over to you, Natasha. I have made you co-host. You can share your screen.
My name is Natasha Zarine. I'm a co-founder at EcoSattva and Carpe, the Center for Applied Research and People's Engagement. I just want to start off by saying that, while I'm speaking, I speak on behalf of a team of 60 people who are working in these three sectors. That's a part of our team. And of course, all our various partners on this Kham River project that are working on this. So um, what I thought I'd start with is an introduction into kind of the process or actually I thought this morning that I should start with a little background about why we're doing the work we're doing and how we started out. I think it's important because it'll set the context. Um, so when Gauri and I decided to work on civic and environmental challenges in Aurangabad, we first picked the space of solid waste management because it was a systemic civic challenge that we had seen was was a challenge that seemed to be growing from year to year since we were children. And and I should at the outset tell you that I have a background in psychology, law, and liberal arts. um, Gauri Mirashi has a background in politics, environment politics. Our undergrad is in environmental politics, and her postgrad is in public policy and governance. And so, with that context, we decided to understand the challenge of solid waste management. Of course, we were looking at it from an ecological perspective as well, but a more kind of a holistic perspective. And we studied the solid waste challenge, and we came up with this report. We looked at all the challenges in Aurangabad and all the best practices across the country, also the laws behind this and the guidelines. And we asked the commissioner at that time. He said, all right, I'll give you half an hour of my time. And we made a presentation to him. And it was Dr. Kamble at that time, Dr. Harshdeep Kamble. And that 30-minute meeting went on for 2 hours. And he said, all right, this is good. I agree. It's very logical. And these are challenges that we have. This was 2013-14. Where he said that even if every person in my in my solid waste management department or in the entire corporation reads this report and reads it twice over, it's not going to change anything. So are you willing to work on ground and implement the recommendations that you've made? Make sure that the system is able to change. And that's how Gauri and I kind of got into implementation. We worked on ground and we started to understand how various interests play out and how there are different forces and what does it really take to drive a systemic change or build a systemic solution to a systemic problem. And so with that approach in mind, we worked in the space of solid waste management, where we have a solution that we've deployed across geographies, including in Buenos Aires and Argentina and Bali. Um, and we've also taken that approach for green cover and water body restoration. So we really believe that what's important is breaking the problem down in its various aspects, getting all those stakeholders on board, understanding the chronology of events and which paths you take on when, and then uh, tackling the systemic challenge accordingly, and ensuring that we're taking the government, like we're really partnering with the government if we want to have our systems, our solutions work at scale. So that's just the context. And so with the Kham River Restoration, which was a project that Varrock Industries and CII had embarked upon in 2016, and they had made an attempt then. And then Varrock continued to be engaged, and then brought us on board to also look at how to tackle this, whether it's even worth it or whether it can even be done. And so what we started with was a study, and I'm just going to briefly, I know that we have very short time, so I'm not going to go into the details of everything, but briefly, I want to give you an overview that this program has multiple partners on board. The municipal corporation is by far leading this, as well as Varrock Industries, that, like I said, since 2016 has been committed, been wanting to do something about the Kham River in Aurangabad. The Aurangabad Cantonment Board, and there are multiple other government bodies as well, but the cantonment board has been involved as well. Ecosattva, my organization, and then additionally, CII, Smart Cities, Irrigation Department, other local NGOs, external experts, state government, etc., have all gotten on board. But this really started as a community level program and has been led by the municipal corporation, the municipal commissioner, Mr. Astik Kumar Pandey. So it's a very interesting mm, example. Um, and I also thought I'd start with this thing about how, we've called this ecological, right? So, but eco and logical being the key word. Um, so, when we take on these challenges of river restoration, or any of these, we're looking at it as an adaptive challenge, and that is what it is. It's an adaptive challenge, not so much a technical challenge. And there's a really interesting study and a paper on this, and I would urge people who are interested in working on these systemic challenges, or who find it complicated, like what technological solution should we have to restore a river or a water body, or whatever the challenge is. It's important to know, to break it down, and to know what part of this challenge is adaptive and what part of it is technical. And I have to be, I'm grateful to the Acumen Fellowship for giving me an understanding of this. So I know I don't have time to go into this, but just to tell you that restoring a river is an adaptive challenge, and then that's what we do. We're able to understand the problems, the various pieces, and then you plug in the technical solutions wherever relevant, wherever there is a technological solution. For example, to assess the current situation of the river, one of the tools, the technical tools, is to use orthophoto imagery with a drone. And there is a technical organization in Pune that could come in to do that. And then we can analyze the data, and that will give us a sense of how, what the river is looking at, where is the encroachment, where is the um, sand mining, where are all the sewage inlet points, etc. So, but to know that we need to bring this in, and at what stage and what kind of information can we expect, that's the adaptive challenge. So I just wanted to put that out there. Now, with the Kham River, as I said, with the municipal corporation, it was planned out in a phase-wise approach. The first part was going to be a study and pilots. So, and then with the pilots, because there's a lot of trial and error, it's not like, there's a model or a technical solution out there that you can just pull in and plug and play. It's not like that. Oftentimes, when to give you that example of solid waste management, when we had gone to the commissioner and said these are all the solutions, and he said, okay, where are the solution providers? And we tried to find them, tried to bring them in. Either they were not there, or they weren't able to scale, or they weren't willing to come to Aurangabad. So so a lot of so these are the actual challenges when you're trying to go on ground and build a systemic change. You don't have the service providers, you don't have the expertise that you need, or they're not willing to come, etc. So therefore, it was going to be trial and error, pilots, see what works, see what doesn't, capture the data, make an informed choice for the next phase. Of course, everyone likes to hear a perfect plan, and everyone likes to think that everything is going to be hunky dory from day one, and it is not. And we say it as it is. So there's a lot of criticism that comes with it, but you kind of got to be ready to take that on. So phase-wise scaling of successful, impactful efforts focus on prevention of pollution was our first focus. That before we talk about restoring a river, we really need to prevent the damage that we're doing every day. How do we stop that? So, prevention of pollution, ecological restoration of riverbanks and riverfront spaces, and citizen engagement and ownership. Phase one, pilots, and this was the focus. Then the idea was to expand to include aspects such as watershed management, disaster management, flood control, river protection plan, etc. All of that comes in phase wise later as we are able to get the right experts on board, get the right funding on board. So it is a phased out program, and uh, and the idea was that this is not going to be something that an external organization, say like mine, or or as long as there's CSR, it'll be done externally, and then somehow the corporation or the government will take over. That wasn't the plan. The plan was to have the government on board from day one, to have the government play a major role in this, and to really build a partnership. And finally, it is the government that will take it on going forward, because that's how we build sustainability into all our systems. All right. So this is just a brief video that we had made that kind of tries to capture everything in 3.5 minutes.
कोणीही ओपन स्पेस किंवा जागेवर कचरा टाकू नये. घंटा गाडीमध्ये वर्गीकरण करूनच टाकावा.
That was a kind of an overview of what has happened within the past 1 year. And so, as you see, the river, the lucky part is that the head of the river kind of originates where Aurangabad is placed right at its origin. So it originates in the Jatwada hills and then flows through Harsul, and that's where the city begins. So we have the first 7.7 kilometers of the river flowing through the northern part of the city and another 7.2 kilometers further down south. And the first part, as I said, the first phase is to focus on the upstream aspect. And what you see here, this situation, or this is a situation of the Nala. You'll see in most cities, there's garbage, there's of course water and sewage. There's the whole ecological aspect of it. There's the infrastructure that is missing or is problematic. And then of course there's the role of people. And when we look at people, it's not just residents, it's municipal corporations, commissioners, sanitary inspectors, the engineering department, the sanitation department, the water and irrigation department, of the district collector, the cantonment board, etc. There are a whole lot of government bodies, and really it's people in these government bodies, right? That we need to be cognizant of whilst planning a river restoration. So, like I said, the main partners are Varrock and Aurangabad Municipal Corporation. Aurangabad Municipal Corporation really owning this, leading this, taking this forward, even with it being really tiny. It's not a huge budget river restoration program like many cities have. There was just an interest in really trying out pilots, trying to figure out how to do this. And then, of course, trying to bring in state government funding, which is exactly the direction that this project is taking. And the municipal commissioner, Mr. Astik Kumar Pandey, who's an IAS officer, really has driven this. Varrock, again, it's a, most companies they get quite a lot of flack, but I have to say this about Varrock. This is entirely driven by their CMD, Mr. Jain, who's been focused on this and wanted a solution. That's how we were able to even get them to put money into trial and error pilots. EcoSattva is my organization that works on the study and the pilots and the design and the communication and the project management. And we have Canton Board, CII, like I said, was involved right from the start with Varrock and Aurangabad Smart Cities, etc. This was the approach we took with the study. I am again cognizant of the time that we have, so I'm not going to go into the details of it. I'll just move on. This is the drone survey and some data analysis of what's happening with the riverbed, the river banks, the blue line, the red line, the green line. And like I said, it started with this, let's pilot this out, let's see what works, what doesn't. It doesn't matter if it's really small budget, but we should do what we can. And because of the efforts and because of the data, and because it's really being led by the corporation, it is getting recognition even at the central government level, the state government. Thankfully, we have a minister who is keen on looking at this from an ecological perspective. And I should tell you that when this was being planned first, we were having early discussions with government bodies. When we mentioned river restoration, the first thing that would come up would be, oh, the Sabarmati riverfront development. Yeah, we should do that. And so negotiating the approach to be a more ecological approach, different approach, a holistic approach, less no concrete, less really development in the way it is usually seen. So all of that, and the media really picked it up. We got a lot of nasty media as well, like bad coverage, but some good coverage too. And the partners are all fully involved, hands-on. So to give you a brief of the approach, there's the ecological riverfront development. So how do we clean out the banks? How do we clean out the river of all the legacy waste, the plastic waste that has been collecting and layering the banks and the bed of the river for
for decades. So taking that out, anyway, I'll go into the details of that, and then how to kind of help the ecology take over again. Then the upstream interventions for prevention of solid waste pollution, liquid waste pollution, and debris, and other, other problems that were happening upstream. And citizen engagement being a major aspect of this. This had to be a program, a project that is owned by the city, that's owned by residents, and not just some government bodies or some experts trying to do something on their own. So it was important to have all these three aspects involved. So with the riverfront space, and I had a whole lot of slides, but I'm just going to try to tell you. The idea was to identify where is the encroachment, where is the dumping, where are the spaces that have been taken over by Juriflora, where is the land mining happening, and how can we, which parts can we first start impacting positively. There are some that we'll have to take on later, because if we take those on, then everything else gets sidelined. Like encroachments, what can be done with that? That is kept for a later stage. While we know exactly where, we've mapped it out. That's at a later stage. First is where can we start working on removing the invasive species, and what can we do with that land? What kind of grasses, what what kind of ecological intervention can we get done, and which spaces can we keep for people to come and interact with the ecology of the river. Because when we did a resident survey, and I don't know if I covered that before, a large % of residents didn't know that Aurangabad had a river called Kham, the name Kham. Everyone knew it as, oh, that Nala. And a lot of people thought that sewage flowing in a Nala was a normal thing. So because Kham River is a seasonal river, it's considered a Nala. And then because most of our Nalas have sewage flowing in them, that's considered normal. So we had to focus on trying to get people to change their perception towards the river, that a river, a seasonal river, is as important and as precious as a perennial river. 90% of our rivers are seasonal. So that was the approach. We also jointly with the municipal corporation and the cantonment board decided that the focus would be on keeping the east bank completely devoid of human, no pathways, no walking, no ecological recreational sites on the east bank. Whatever we'll do on the west bank, and even that would be done ecologically, keeping in mind biodiversity, keeping in mind not using concrete and things like that. So overall, 90,000 square meters have been cleaned of literally layers of garbage and debris. 16,000 square meters have been greened in the sense of, grasses have been introduced up wherever relevant. We've planted the right kind of trees. We've also created green spaces. There are a few yoga lawn spaces and an upcycled amphitheater, because like I said, we have to create spaces where people can come and interact with the river. So some of the numbers of saplings planted, and the banks that have been pitched, because after all that cleaning, we needed to make sure that there wasn't going to be erosion. So pitching using rocks that had been excavated by MIT College whilst making their hostel buildings. So that was kind of construction and demolition waste, but they helped us access it, helped the municipal corporation access it, and it was used to pitch the banks. A lot of the cleaning happened manually. Many organizations, also the municipal commissioner coming every Saturday, various groups, coming to volunteer. That's the pitching of the banks. There is another video, but I think I'll skip this. That video is about flooding and how this year the flooding didn't happen, but anyway, that was too long a video. Yeah, this is the amphitheater that has been, so all these spaces were covered in garbage and debris. So it wasn't like there was like this, grassy, nice river bank that has been now made into this. It was literally a mess. So butterfly gardens, porous pathways. So the pathways you see are not, there is no cement, concrete, or any kind of material used apart from broken brick debris, which has been compacted and made into pathways, and then some gravel. Again, one criticism we get is, oh, what does painting on the walls have to do with river restoration? But this is where it's important to get people involved, to get them to express and connect with the river. And so we had some wall, wherever there was a wall already present, we had some way of getting citizens engaged. Nothing is just a pretty picture. There is information of different species that live along the Kham and in this region, and nocturnal species in this blue space, as you can see. Barricading and plastic trapping was the focus upstream. In the first pilot for solid waste management, we covered 5,000 households, making sure that they're giving their waste to the vehicles. We identified all the locations from which there was waste coming into the river directly or into the nala and then into the river, and did route mapping and planning to ensure that that waste stopped being dumped into the river and was actually being connected to the collection system. These are just some numbers that I'll just leave there for you to read. As you can see, the part that I told you, the idea was that this is not going to be a separate thing. This is part of the entire municipal system. So if we want to prevent solid waste from entering the river, we have to work with the municipal system to ensure effective doorstep collection, and route mapping and planning, and SOPs for municipal bodies to do this in a way that's sustainable and systematic. And that's what the municipal commissioner really did. For example, previously the nala cleaning was a every pre-monsoon activity and used to be contracted out. So you mentioned the details of, why is it contracted out? How much does it cost? What is the area that's going to be cleaned? What happens to it later, etc. And then decided to do it in-house and made an SOP out of it. Now this is something that's going to be done every year in-house with data captured of exactly how many JCBs or how many people required to clean what length of the nala and river. Where does that material then be taken to? How is it going to be further processed? And how is all of this going to be monitored and the data captured? So, and while doing this, it was always a consultative process. We would have meetings on site on every Saturdays, led by the commissioner, also the CEO of the CAN board, us, and other stakeholders coming together. And then there would be meetings in office, the sanitary department, the heads of the sanitary department, the SI in charge of this, Mr. Asadullah Khan, the engineering department, everyone would be sitting together and working out the plans, and we would be capturing the data and collecting responses and discussing those. And that's how the plan was executed. It's just I wish I could go into the details of how we did this, but I'll leave it for the questions. It's another video. So this is the police colony, to just give you an example of what needed to be done in solid waste in this one colony right at the start. This was made by my team member working on the project in this ward. So it's a very basic video, but it'll give you a sense.
वार्ड नंबर 27 में जब हमने ड्राइवर से उसके रूट के टाइमिंग को चेंज करने के लिए जब पूछा तो वो बिल्कुल भी तैयार नहीं था। उसका रिएक्शन ये था कि मेरा जो रूट है 2.5 साल से सेम चल रहा है, उसमें मेरे को जो भी आता अच्छा आता, तो आप जो चेंज करके मेरा वार्ड डिस्टर्ब कर देंगे। ठीक है, तो नाहिद नगर का जो क्वेश्चन है तो हमने वहाँ पर सुबह 8 बजे के बजाय वहाँ पे 10 बजे गाड़ी डाला। जो पुलिस कॉलोनी में 11 बजे गाड़ी जाती थी तो हमने वहाँ पे सुबह 8 बजे किया।
स्पीकर लेके किया, डोर टू डोर जाके अवेयरनेस किया। नेक्स्ट डे तब हम लोग गए तो वहाँ का मतलब जो सेग्रीगेशन था तो एकदम सुपर हिट था। और जो उनके जीबीपी उठाने के लिए पूरे 1.5 घंटा लगते थे, 1.5 से 2 घंटे, तो आज उन्होंने सिर्फ 5 मिनट में वो 2 झोली ऐसा खुशी खुशी फेंक दिया।
ड्राइवर अभी फिलहाल हम पुलिस कॉलोनी में है, यहाँ पर 100% हम लोगों को वर्गीकरण मिला है ओला और सुक्का। यहाँ पर टीम ने काफी मेहनत की है, इसलिए हम लोगों को यहाँ पर 100% ओला सुक्का मिला है। ओला सुक्का घना टाइम पे मिला गया ना, कचरा भी कमी है।
त्याचा खूप त्रास होता आम्हाला, मोबाईल जनावरे आता बंद केल्यापासून छान आहेत, आम्ही आनंदी आहे। ज्या पोलीस कॉलनीमध्ये 209 फॅमिली आहेत, तिथला फक्त 22 घरांचा मिक्स कचरा येत होता आणि जी 5 आहे ती 5 ते 6 आणि छोटे छोटे खूप जास्त आहेत। तर त्या 22 घरांवर आपण आज 109 या कलेक्शनवरती आलो।
So that was just to give you a sense of the level of micro planning and systemic solutions that have to be put in place, again with the municipal corporation, with the approvals of the municipal commissioner, also of the solid waste management in charge, also of the sanitary inspectors, the supervisors, and then the drivers and the labor. So everyone needs to be aligned with what we're doing, and that's how doorstep collect. That's how you can prevent waste from ending up in the river and nala. And it's systemic. So the GVPs that you saw, those were not just cleaned up before and after, and that's how the photographs were taken. It's just that waste stopped coming out into these areas or stopped going into GVPs that were along the nala. That was just so this is just some examples of GVPs. I don't have great before after pictures, but you'll get a sense of it. This is again one ward, a more detailed breakup. And like I said, we focus on collecting the data. What we're doing, is it really impactful? Is it really working? Is it not? We know that based on, of course, what we hear from people, which is very important, but also on what the data tells us. There's 379 houses connected to the collection system. So before we started working in the wards, the municipal corporation was already giving its collection service. Yet there were 379 households that were not giving their waste into the municipal daily municipal collection system. So that waste was either landing up in GVPs or straight into the river and nala. And it's really hard to capture how much waste is coming into the river and nala and weigh that and all of that. So what we have to do is triangulate the data. But this we know these many houses are not giving that waste to the vehicles. So speaking to them and understanding where the challenges, where the timings are not matching, etc., and then making that connection. So 379 households now are giving that waste to the vehicles, and we know this also because the amount of waste that the vehicle is collecting, the amount of dry waste that's coming to an MRF that we're running, all of that gives us an insight into what's actually going on with the collection system. I don't have the time to go into this slide, but maybe I'll leave the question. Lots of citizen engagement programs. Again, these have to happen once we have a plan in place, starting with citizen awareness. Without having a plan in place, without ensuring that you can actually give a regular doorstep collection that's reliable and that's connected with the right timing, is pointless. So yeah, and then of course this is the infrastructural challenge, where there are bridges where access to the river and nala is like, it's just there. It's also hazardous, so barricading is needed. But even after doing all that awareness and system setting, we're still going to get waste coming into the river. So what is plan B? What is the next stage of how are we going to prevent it? So barricading bridges, making access to the river harder for dumping. And that's being done. A few were done by us through CSR, but majority of them are being done. I would say all of them are being done now by the municipal corporation, because they saw that this works and it is effective and it's worth spending that money. So pilots showing that it makes sense, and really getting the buy-in from the municipal leadership. If it's logical, if it makes sense, if it's not too high cost, they're willing to adopt it. Some plastic trapping, how to set up plastic traps, these are all experimental. The yellow one has been designed by the commissioner himself. Retrieval has to be done in a way that does not require humans to go in and bring that material out. So what kind of technology is available? What can we use? And I can tell you, we really tried to find technology and found a dearth and a big gap in this space, because you don't have the right kind of technology that can deal with our broken sewers, our nalas, the kind of mixed waste, the cloth and fabric waste that comes in, etc. Plastic trapping, again, different kind of plastic traps. We put an RFP out there and found that whatever was available in the market was just not appropriate for our situation or for seasonal rivers. So tried to adapt that, got somewhat success, but not really. So now designing new plastic traps. And citizen engagement, like I said, having people involved, having a campaign logo, constantly having events, constantly meeting people and talking to them, not just, so definitely about the biodiversity. There are birding walks, and some of our Prakriti research fellow experts have also come in and have done a walk on odonates. So that's happening, but as well as how to make eco-friendly Ganpatis. How today there's a workshop on making eco-friendly holy color, whatever it is that will bring people there and get them to connect with the river, with the city, with our heritage. So that's being done constantly. News is there. This was a wall mural competition where residents sent in their entries, and then the best ones got to paint on part of the income tax office wall. There's a Kham song coming up. I wish it were ready. I'd have loved to have played it, but it's really cool. Yeah, and we'll launch it soon. So events, participation, the cantonment board really being involved, multiple things were being organized. So cleanup continues. And yes, I have to mention, we received a lot of support, help, guidance from Jeevit Nadi, Shailaja ji, and a few others of her team. And so it's been a collaborative, we've been really sharing information and building the solution as we go along. And that's how this program has been designed. Thank you. I'll stop here and maybe take questions now. I hope I've stuck to my time limit.
Yeah, thank you, Natasha, ma'am. It's indeed a very inspiring work. We have a couple of questions. Shishir Rawar asking, appreciating your work, first of all, and asking a few questions. How did you manage to convince to start working from upstream and not adopt the SRDP model? He himself is also associated with Vishwamitri River Project in Vadodara. Yeah,
that's a great question. So like I said, when we were first brought on board by Varrock, what we said is we need to do a study. We are not going to say that we can do this or this is the best way to do it or etc. We need to do a study into what needs to be done. And then that study will guide what we think the next step should be, what the budget should be, etc. So we got some money from Varrock to be put into actually conducting a study. And that helped us get a perspective on which should be the locations that we start with, where should be the interventions, how the chronology of interventions should be planned, etc. So that's one of the ways we found out how. Another way is, again, trial and error. Like I said, Varrock and CII had done an intervention before and had done the intervention downstream. And it was a technical intervention. So how to put green bridges, etc., to treat the sewage flowing through. And it was a good effort, but through the problems that they faced with that, we also learned that was one of the other things which is why it was easy to convince people that we had to go upstream. And I think the third factor is that we are like I said, Aurangabad is placed very close to the head of the river, to where the river starts. So starting upstream was logical. So that's, and we had multiple meetings. The municipal commissioner, accepted completely, came on board. So that's how we could, I guess there were a bunch of factors that were actually on ground, like I said, Aurangabad being at the beginning of the river. And then a bunch of other factors like the trial and error that had happened before, through which we knew that starting downstream is not a great idea. So I hope that answers your question.
There are a few more questions from him. Where was the removed solid waste and debris taken and how was it treated? Also, he asked where exactly the stone pitching was necessary and how did you consider alternatives to stone pitching on the banks?
All right, so 2 questions. The first part was what happened to the waste and where was it taken? So the waste was collected by the municipal corporation through its solid waste collection service and taken to the 2 municipal corporation processing plants where they process some. We have the dry waste. There's segregation of waste at source happening in the majority of the city, but there is still some mixed waste as well. So at the decentralized level, we run a few material recovery facilities with the corporation, and that's where the dry waste goes. But the mixed waste, as well as the the stuff that came out of the river, was taken to the larger processing plants and first laid out in windrows, allowed to drain, dry up, as well as then it was sprayed with biocultures, turned, and then finally put through a few trommels to separate out at least the organic parts of it and the small silt. And then we had the refuse. And the refuse will eventually go for refuse-derived fuel as RDF for in cement kilns eventually. So that's how it'll be finally disposed of. But it is a problem. There's no very clear, straightforward answer to it. And sorry, what was the second?
Yeah, second was about the stone pitching.
Yeah. So wherever there was excessive debris, plastic waste, these sewage inlets, also where there was place where soil had been dug out for use in brick kilns, etc. Those were the places first that were cleaned out. There was a lot of JCB Poclane work that was done by the corporation. And so to stabilize the banks, it was decided to do stone pitching without concrete. So this was like loose boulder pitching. No concrete fixing of these boulders was done. And it was decided that that was the best approach and the fastest, considering the monsoon was around the corner and we couldn't wait for any other kind of intervention. It was also the cheapest. So at some places we are planting, and it's of course not done entirely across where it was found that the flow would cause more erosion. Those parts were taken first and then expanded to other areas.
Yeah, there is another question from Kumareshwari Rajendran. She's appreciating your presentation and wonderful participatory approach can be seen. So can you elaborate on the multiple levels of community engagement a bit?
Sure. So first, let me also say that, like I said, this is not just me, my co-founder. We also had Ashwin Paranjpe, who's been a co-founder in our organization, also from Pune, and has worked on this, as well as multiple other experts that have worked and they've plugged in their expertise wherever required. Vivek for the ecological study of the biodiversity. So but your question was about community engagement. So multiple levels. First, during our first study itself, we spoke to 650 individuals across the city to find out their perceptions towards the river, their practices in waste management, etc. And that's where we understood that, the Kham really doesn't have any identity. And its identity is the the dirty nala that nobody wants to look at. So we understood that that's the perception, and that's the perception that we're going to have to change. So that was one part where we got people's perceptions towards the river, their practices. Should a nala have sewage flowing through it? Is that normal? A large portion thought it was normal, and it has been normalized, right, in most of our cities. So at the level of planning itself, getting citizen engagement in, also understanding like oral history. What do people who live along the river remember it as? Was it always this dirty nala, or did they? And we got lots of stories. In fact, even our MLC said how we used to walk along the river and sometimes jump into the small natural ponds. So getting those stories out was also important at that stage. And then, like I said, when you're looking at ecological restoration of the riverbanks, we also have to look at creating spaces for residents to come there, the recreational spaces. They can be ecological. Are they the best thing for ecology and biodiversity? Should there be people coming there at all? Maybe not. But if we really want the river in the long term to be protected, we do need to create spaces where we can get people to access the riverbanks, to be connected. And so certain spaces were identified where we would get people, that would be exciting for people to come to the riverfront. So that's the other way it was designed. That and then, of course, events, heritage conversations, talks, walks. You saw the mural competition, the song competition. So that's all out there. And I have to remind you that this happened first during the first wave of COVID, where we couldn't really do much. That was when the study was happening and we had permission to at least go and collect samples and things like that. And then the second wave, where we had to stop citizen engagement, most of it moved online. So there were all these complications, but I think it worked out. And I'm really glad for the, I'm surprised at the amount of engagement of residents and interest that has been created. So I'd be happy to go into all the various things that have been done, but I don't know if I have the time. I can see Neha's face nodding. So
yeah, I have just last question from Madhu Reddy. How did you choose the specific species for saplings?
We had an expert come in to advise on this. Vivek Broom from Pune, actually, and a few other organizations did advice on this. And we also spoke in the space of green cover. So little bit. So we are sensitized and we understand that it has to be the right kind of species. It can't just be anything that you plant here. But like I said, we plug in the expertise wherever needed.
Yeah, thank you, Natasha. You can just answer a few questions, maybe regarding the research. You can post a few YouTube links of the videos we missed, maybe. And thank you very much.
Thank you.